this is another episode of the Public Therapy Podcast with your host, Chris.
Right.
And today, on today's episode, we have with us Laura Knight, who is a mystic, speaker, and visionary. How you doing, Laura?
Hello, guys. I am well. How are you?
Doing pretty good.
All right.
Yeah. Okay. Raven's so awkward. So where is it that you're from?
I am originally from Massachusetts, from a suburb just outside of Boston.
Okay.
I'm currently based in Boston, and I travel a lot overseas, mostly the UK and Europe.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm based in Boston now.
Okay. So, yeah, we kind of talked about it a little bit before we started the show. So what is it? Can I ask you what you do whenever you're traveling, or does it have anything to do? Are we gonna naturally slide into that, or?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Well, yes. I do travel for pleasure, but I'm not wandering the world. Although that sounds appealing. I am usually speaking at an event, or serving in some way, facilitating a workshop, a retreat of some kind. And the foundation of what I do, may I explain what a mystic is before I get into what I do? Because then I think it'll
right. Because some of our listeners, like even me, whenever you told me that you were a mystic, I'm kind of like, I don't know what a mystic is, but I kind of have a idea. But some of my listeners have probably heard me say mystic and like, what's a mystic?
So the definition of mystic is someone that works with the unseen, right? And that's a broad umbrella. And so for me, what that means, usually you say a mystic with these gifts or abilities. So I am a mystic. I work in the unseen, and my specific abilities are mediumship. So I connect with those who have lived and now have passed. I prove the continuity of life past physical death. I also, work specifically with help with guiding people, supporting people, bearing witness to their alignment with the unseen. Because obviously, it's, and by the unseen, I mean loved ones who've passed away and any other, in America, we say energy. I know in other places they say spirits. So I'm going to use the word spirit. Any other spirits that are there to connect with us, help us, and support us. I support people who are on that journey to just become more aware of how interconnected we are and what else there is to be connected with.
Yeah.
Is that clear?
It is clear, but I have
Please.
So how does someone comes to you, and I guess they come to you lost or confused about someone that may have passed or that has passed, that may have.
They're either.
I don't know if that was a dumb question or not.
Oh no, it's an excellent question. Because many people, there are many mediums out there, and each person attracts what they are best at. That's what I've come to know after these 30, let's not dwell on that, but after many years, is that, so when you said, does someone come for you searching, people our minds are searching, our spirit, your essence is guiding, right? So what I consider misdirection of being lost is inaccurate. There's just disconnection within yourself, right? Misalignment. And so your soul is guiding you, or your essence, your spirit or your essence is guiding you, and your mind is just not connected to it, right? And so it feels lost. So yes, people often come to me in a crisis, but that tends to be what I've dealt with most of my life. Crisis seems to be my specialty. And so to answer your question, yes. However, people can see medium, they just want to connect with their relative in a more concrete way, or have confirmation with the connections that they're having or communications that they're having with a loved one who's passed away.
Okay. See, I'm so ignorant because for me, when I think of ignorant, and even whenever you wrote to me explaining what it is that you do, in the back of my head, I'm like, so you don't speak to the dead.
Yes, I absolutely do.
You do speak to the dead.
For sure.
So how was your first
now
experience?
You got questions. Now Raven don't never want to talk on nobody podcast. Okay.
How was the first experience someone you knew or someone you didn't know and it shocked you or it scared you, or were you comfortable the first time?
Well, this has been a lifelong thing for me, so I'm pausing because I'm trying to figure out which one to share with you. So to answer your question directly, this has always been a thing. My grandparents were my best friends, and they all passed before I was born, my biological grandparents. They're the ones who saved me from many a beating when I was younger, because I was a colorful child.
Yeah.
But when my mother would take us out, my parents were born in the 1920s, so you just sat down and followed direction. They would play with me. They would keep me busy. And so they were my best friends. And so that was my first engagement and interaction. What I began to become aware of things when I started to share with my parents, things that their parents were saying. That's a whole other story, but that's when I became aware that this was a thing and not everybody is talking to my grandparents in the way that I was. And my mother actually would talk to her mother, and she's talking to like mother. And so if you can imagine a toddler and then a mother talking to her deceased mother answering the toddler like, why are you two having two different conversations? It's very confusing because I'm like, she's answering you, but you're ignoring her. But so that was my first instance.
Uh-huh.
And so those were my first memories. Having said that, you said, you were saying, is there a moment that was like, whoa? And that came so many decades later, because again, it was just something that naturally happened. Throughout my life. I've always been guiding people through situations that require connection to their essence, to their spirit, not necessarily labeling it like that. So if we fast forward to a couple decades, I was on the subway. I had some some family members that passed, and I was just in a difficult spot because, even though mediums, we know that life continues on after physical death, there's something to the physical part of life. Like, I like people being here with me. Mm-hmm. So even though I know you're there, I don't care. I still want you here. And so I was mourning, and I was on the train, and I don't even remember where I was going. I was on the red line, heading into Cambridge, and the doors open, a woman got on the train, an elderly woman, so I stood up so she could sit down. It was rush hour, and everybody moved back away from me. So if you imagine, it's rush hour, body to body, and I had said, "Oh, do you want this seat?" She said, "Yes." And then she sits down, and I said, "Are you okay?" She said, "Yes." And I'm just doing my thing. And then I look around, and there's no one around me. And then I looked again, and I saw that she was in fact the spirit. I just wasn't paying attention. So it was like I outed myself. So fun fact, if you ever want to clear some space for yourself on a subway,
start talking things.
So I have had that moment where I was like, oh, I felt out of control. Like it had to be something that was more than just something that I kept within myself and selectively served people, because I was like the best kept secret in Boston for a long, long, long time. That moment it was like, oh, it's on camera now. It's done.
So do you still? So do you still struggle with, even though you know that you have this gift that you can speak to people once they've passed, do you still struggle when someone passes? Do you,
Oh,
or do you, I guess the question would, because I guess everyone would struggle, but do you think you struggle the same way someone else would?
oh, I don't know. I don't think so, because I'm not, I know they're still alive. So I don't see them as gone, but now our relationship has shifted.
Okay.
And so one of the things I say, or I don't know if I say it anymore because I'm focused on my social justice work, but one of the things I said is that death is the only phase of life that is an opportunity for expansion or growth for those around you, right? Because someone passes away and then the connection is still there, but if you're not aware of it, then, you experience you think you're experiencing all these things, but the opportunity to open up and become aware of the other aspects of your intelligence, of your senses, right? There's not just physical senses, you have sentient senses. Everyone has them. Death is the only phase of life that it's almost like the gift. I see it as an exchange for losing their physical presence. We get the gift of developing these things within ourselves to be aware and connected to so much more. Having said that, yes, I miss hugging my friends. I miss hugging my dad, my sister, my brother. I miss that. And I am a tactile person. And so, yeah, I definitely get an attitude.
Right.
For sure.
Man, I don't know. I guess it seems scary for me because I mean, I'm someone that, I don't know. It seems scary to talk to the past, I guess. I would love to converse with my grandfather. He passed when I was 4 or 5, and I'd love to have a conversation with him. And it's weird because I still remember him, but I don't know. I feel like I'd be freaked out a little bit. And then I'd be freaked out in the sense of, because you see spirits, they're watching over, all this other stuff. Like, what do you see though? Like, what are you watching everything? Like, are they respectful? It's like weird things,
So yes, from in my experience, in my understanding, is they're not with us in the bathroom. They don't want to be with you in the bathroom. There's nothing that they're interested in. Now, if you're calling them, because a lot of times a lot of awareness happens in the shower, that doesn't mean that they're there with you in the shower, because water is amazing, and water is a conduit for energy, right? We see it with electricity, all sorts of things. Same thing with spirits. So a lot of times with people in the shower, they have moments, quote unquote. So other than those moments, and no, they're not just sliding in looking at you, because their physical eyes are no longer there, right? So Michael Beckwith is a speaker. He's a minister as well. And so he has this great phrase that says, you don't have eyes. You have eyes because you develop the ability to see. And then he goes through all the senses like that, right? You developed ears because you had the ability to hear. And so if we think of that ability is the essence, that ability is the spirit. And so that ability doesn't go away. And that's what's connecting, is your sentient ability connects to their sentient ability that is no longer bound in a body. It's no longer inhabiting a body. And that's what connects.
Okay.
When you're doing things. And then also when you're having private moments, you're definitely not thinking about them. So they're nowhere to be found, right? So yeah, no, they're not around. No.
Okay. So what's your spiritual background? Not spiritual, but your religious background. If you're religious.
Well, my parents technically were Baptist, but my mother had gifts. My mother was a dream worker. I'm also mystic covers many things, and I only shared with you 3. But dream work is a deep passion of mine, and I came to know that I'm the third generation that has done this. My mother did it, and her mother and my father's mother, which I didn't know, did dream work, and my father's mother would be what we would call a medium. And so under the umbrella of, you know, Christianity, that's the quote unquote, that's the influence I had. But from my, you know, there was a mixture of spiritualism and Christianity that was just unsaid in Black culture at the time, you know, in the way, you know, when my parents were being raised. And so it's just seen as we were Christian, but yeah, we had all this other stuff that, you know, had nothing to do with the Bible, but was part of the religion. Does that make sense?
No, sorry. It does. Now the next question, and not to offend you or anything like that, but where I grew up in church, some people may look at you as if you're crazy.
Yeah.
Okay. I was really hoping that wasn't going to offend you.
No, for sure.
I'm not saying you're crazy, and I don't think you're crazy at all. But I'm saying the culture that I grew up in, as far as like my church back, because I grew up in the church. My dad's a preacher and all that other stuff. And some people in the church, not necessarily my parents, may assume that you're crazy when you say some of the things that you say.
Right. No. But these are also the same people, like, because, you know, that would be at the back door, at my mother's back door, asking for her to give her a tincture. Okay. I grew up herbalist. So I'm the balance. I call it the balance of that. Yeah. Oh yeah. I definitely grew up with a lot of that. Okay. You know, and I still have a few aunts and uncles alive. So I'm running through a story and trying to see if I should say it, make it public. I'm skipping that. So, but suffice it to say that in my family, you know, we will leave the church and then some of us will go in the kitchen and have a conversation or make something, you know what I mean? Like it's just done. There was no questioning it and all this, I don't know, it's different now. But yeah, it was just a natural flow. So yeah, I'm very familiar with that.
Okay.
And, yeah.
I'm glad.
And I just want to, if I can, I don't want to forget about your grandfather. You know, I just want to point out that when understanding the expectation, because he can't speak to you in the way that you're used to, understand that communication will now may come through senses. It may come through the hearing. So either externally or internally, right? Hearing a thought, hearing a sentence, hearing a familiar phrase. However, you know, your grandfather, you can always connect with your grandfather. I tell this to my clients before I shifted to, you know, my other work. I always tell my clients, you can always connect to your family, your friends, much more easily, much more effectively than a medium once you get going, right? The reason people come to us is because we're highly sensitive and we refine and we work at our craft. And so to remember that your grandfather is flowing through you right now, right? Because we know energy cannot be created or destroyed, right? It can only be transmuted and shared. Yeah. And so his DNA is in you right now. So if you want to access your grandfather, she's just a thought away. A thought is a form of electricity. We know that we're energy. And then you think of it, and that's what happens a lot of times is people think of the loved one, then you feel them coming in, right? It's a wave of emotion. And then everybody gets overwhelmed and then, oh my gosh, and shuts it down. But you called them. Yeah. Like I promise you this is in the top 3 things of the things that mediums talk about is, well, yeah, I answered and you told me to go away. Like that type of conversation. Wow. Because the understanding and the perception of how the communication will happen or how it will be experienced butts up against what's really happening. If that makes sense. So I just wanted to touch on it.
That's interesting. Still scary. It's, okay, we can talk about that all day. I don't want to get hung up on that. Okay, so I saw that you were a medicine worker doing sacred ceremonies.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What do you do with that?
So I serve in the medicine tent. Actually, this year it's been Some things have been modified.
Mm-hmm.
But for danza, there's a danza in, and I don't have permission to speak about it, so I was about to say the name, but I'm going to hold off on that. But there is a native people down in Texas, and they hold sacred ceremony. They hold the moon dance. There's sun dances and moon dances. Sun dance is the men, and moon dance is the women. And so I serve in the medicine tent doing spiritual medicine.
Okay.
And then I support the herbal. There's many herbal medicine workers. But if there's any need for that, and then also physical first aid. So
when people like have, I guess for the lack of a better term, when they trip off of things like, maybe peyote is one of them that you help people with.
No, that's different. Peyote is that's a journey. That's a spiritual medicinal. Peyote, marijuana, ayahuasca,
Mm-hmm.
and so. They are, when used with purpose, I'm really not needed, right?
Oh, okay.
Because you're literally going directly to the source. And because what those plants do is they literally override conditioning of the mind. And it's almost like you override that hump of that block, like they bring down the barrier that we have, and it allows for communication.
Okay.
So
there's no crossover.
Huh?
So there's no crossover. There wouldn't be any crossover and things like that.
What do you mean?
So like you wouldn't deal with someone who's looking for help through medicinal purposes, because they're looking for something else versus coming to a medium or getting some spiritual healing.
Well, it's all interconnected, but there are, and it depends on how you're looking for them. Right. Mm-hmm. So if you're just looking, I want to do, it depends. I would refer you probably to one of the people who specialize in that, because they're specialists to work with you through that. Now, I would be someone who'd be after that. So after you've left because it's a process. Mm-hmm. to, I know people use it differently. So, but in my spaces, it's a process of using peyote. So it's not something you just come to and do for an hour or two. Mm-hmm. Same thing with marijuana. It's not something you come and do for an hour or two. It's about a day or two. Yeah. So after the process, if there's anything, then yeah, I would be the one to serve you then. But the specialists with the plant who have a special connection with the plant would work with you.
Okay.
Because they would be speaking on through the plant.
All right. Cool. And I saw one more thing. I'll say one more thing. That's not one more thing, but you help restore the earth to a balanced state. Mm-hmm. So what does that mean?
Yeah. So what I did, I did work with one of my nanas is a water keeper, and so also, I work with a sister that is a water keeper as well. So they go to the bodies of water. This is pretty primarily on this continent, and then on the European continent, I serve fire keepers, 2 of them specifically, and so they literally serve the element, and I either will be a conduit again and speak if there's any confusion or if there's any clarity. That everyone has a role in a ceremony, and it's not just the moment of the ceremony, it's everything leading up to it and after it. That's all ceremony, right? Mm-hmm. And so if I can serve in any way, and then what I often do as well is the pre-conditioning, or not conditioning, but pre-teachings. I hesitate to say teachings because I feel like everybody knows this. That's just my universal belief. Mm-hmm. But the preparation. So rather than saying, oh, we're going to the water is already within us. We're majority water, right? When people say, oh, I'm going to nature. No, you're not going to nature. We are nature. Yeah. Even though we've decided to build our houses or whatever, every animal builds a house. We are nature. So helping people to make that shift and mentally, and because once you start to make that shift mentally, you start to feel different. You start to feel the alignment of your essence. There's something happening, and that something happening is the alignment. So I do that work. Then in the ceremony, I usually have a couple roles.
Okay. Cool. Oh, I thought you were about to ask a question. Okay. I want to get in. Oh, you about to say something?
No.
Oh, okay. I want to get into the racial injustice and everything else that you're doing at the moment. But I got one more question. So my wife, she has a phobia. She does not like things that buzz. She's scared of like flies and things. Like she freaks out at the front door sometimes if there's a fly. She won't come in the house. Can you help her with that?
You know, I gotta approve these questions next time. I gotta read through them next time.
So is that the question, Raven? Yes. Before at the end.
Is it? What was the question?
The question is, can you help my wife who has a phobia of flies and things that buzz and spiders and things like that?
Oh my goodness.
She freaks out. Like she has. I mean, it's a phobia.
Yeah, it is.
Right. And so phobias are usually rooted in our mind, right? Because we have this perception of whatever it is. And we project an experience that most times we haven't had yet onto whatever the phobia is. So and not for nothing, I do know what it's like to open a door and see all sorts of things on a door. It can give one pause. So having said that, what I often do and offer my clients is to really connect to the fear and say, is it fear that, really what is it I'm feeling? Am I feeling fear, or is it something I'm not used to, and am I labeling it as fear? Like, is it some sort of anger? Is it this desire to go after, to run away? And really understanding what I'm experiencing in that moment, because one, I am nature, right? And we all move through the world. If we look at nature, because we are nature, right? If we look at the other parts of nature, there's no, every animal gives the other animals respect. So there's fear and then there's respect. So is it, I'm giving them respect, but I feel like I shouldn't because I'm human, and I feel like, and I've been taught that humans should just not be afraid of them. But there is a reason to be afraid. There are large animals that are afraid of insects. There may be a reason to be fearful of them. And then also, depending on what insect it is it a representation of something, right? So what is at the door? What is coming? And what is the buzzing? You can speak to the buzzing and be like, what is that? Why is this bothering me so much? And just, the first time you start, something's going to come to your mind, just hold it. Just allow it to sit for a moment.
Yeah.
And give it credence instead of excusing it away, because the oftentimes when things like that happen, they're happening for a reason. And so if they are messengers, then they definitely are going to keep coming back. Definitely, until you get the message, or they change, the approach changes. But that's similar to what I teach in dream work. We think that nightmares are a bad thing, but nightmares are really our essence and those that love us and are for us in the unseen, screaming at our mind to pay attention to something, right? Nightmares are rarely a one-off thing. They usually are building towards something. Yeah. Well, listen to the message, right? And so similarly with phobias, not all, because they're rooted in the mind, so they can come from many places. But if the psychological systems or ways to address them don't work, I guide people towards that. Does that make sense?
Does that make sense, Reagan?
Makes sense.
Hopefully it's not messages.
Hopefully not, because it's going to take me a minute to get it to me.
Well, if it is supposed to be like, what's the message? Because I want you gone, and then close the door. And, the universe answers. Time is just a thing all of us as humans agreed to. The universe will answer you immediately. So,
I would love to figure that one out because this girl, she will run. Like it can be a fly coming in our room at like 8 o'clock at night, and you know, in the UK, being in the UK, we don't have AC or anything, so sometimes I keep the windows open. The fly comes in, she will not sleep. She'll jump up out of bed and scare me. I almost have a heart attack. We need to figure this out.
I was stationed in Italy, northern Italy, with my then fiance, special forces, and he was on maneuvers, but I was at home. And you know, you have to do the shuffle over there with the what is it called, the things that close the windows, because we don't have screens.
Yeah, we call them what do you call those things? What's that movie?
Shutters.
Yeah, shutters. But it reminds me of the movie with Will Smith where he played I Am Legend. Remember how he had all the things on his house and he shut up? Yeah. I like those though.
Listen, I used to be, first of all, I was the mosquitoes just look forward to nightfall to eat me alive. But, you know, it was so hot there. Anyways, I was reading a book, and I don't use a lot of ambient, electric light. I usually try to stay and flow with the earth. So if it gets dark, then it gets dark where I'm at, and I will have light, but the light usually comes from the bottom up, similar to fire rather than the top down. Anyways, so I was reading a book, reading by moonlight, and that was it. And then a bat flies in and starts flying around the room. Nope. So I was like, well, I was far away from the door because that's what the moonlight was. And so I was like, I'm really staying here. I'm over 6 feet tall. So I have never wrapped myself, never have balled up like I did then. And then the next thing that happened was an owl flew in, caught the bat, and then landed. The American military, at least, they have these standard armoires and all these things, and we had to have this really large one that was not standard, and the owl landed on top with the bat and just stared at me. And you know, I don't know the time, because definitely time was different for me than for them, but I just sat there staring, and it was a major moment. And then I became aware that it was initiation, and it was an unforgettable time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would have. Yeah, I'm out.
Either I'm going through the window or I'm finding a way out.
I was on the second floor. I didn't even think about that, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I can ask you so many questions about the whole mediums thing like that. Next time you're in the UK, we got to have you over, because I'll probably bug you. I'll probably talk your ears off because I have so many questions, but the podcast unfortunately can't be that long. So I want to get into what it is that you do now.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. So I have my own company.
Okay.
But it's really my own service. And so what I call it is Season of Lotus. And it is anti-racism from a holistic approach, and it's focused on whiteness. So there's no trauma of Black or any people of color that is shared. We completely focus on whiteness. Now, occasionally, non-white story will come in, but that's not the focus. And it's based on the understanding, that racism and all the other isms are not a logical challenge or question to be solved. This is a spiritual or essential humane shift to be made. And so coming from that approach, it frees up, and I might focus on white women, and that could be my bias, but I believe women change the world, so that's why I focus on white women. But men are great, but that's just how I come at it. So Yeah, so in my spaces, we free ourselves from, like, for example, falsehoods. Like, I don't use the word white privilege, don't use the word ally. We don't, we have what I call effective anti-racism language to create that shift, because words are things. Excuse me. And words are tools, and they are amplified by the energy we put behind it, but they are tools and they are quite effective. So when using effective language that I offer, or anything more effective than the current mainstream anti-racism language, my clients have found that, one, it is a much more fluid and dynamic and more natural way of releasing their racist conditioning. And then not only that, but then to connect with other people and really understand and be more effective around isms, period. Because racism isn't the original ism, that's sexism, but it is the foundational ism for the last half millennia. And if you can address and shift and transmute racism, then all of the other ones dissolve, because it's that one, you pull that one thread and the rest collapse. That makes, you're wanting an example, I can see it on your face. What would you like?
Well,
what would you like?
I don't know. I have like, I don't know, maybe this is my spiritual talent, I guess, because so many questions come at me at one time, like it hits me in the face and I don't know which one to ask. So,
Right.
I'm trying to ask the one that's not the dumbest, I guess.
There's no such thing as a dumb question.
I know people say that, and then you hear a dumb question, you be like, okay, that was kind of dumb. I used to do it to my the people I used to supervise all the time. Like, there's no such thing as a dumb question. Like, okay, I changed my mind. That was pretty dumb. Though. You don't ask no more questions today. I'm just a jokester though. I think you explained why you chose white women, but I guess the same question I asked earlier. What type of negative pushback did you get doing this type of work?
Yeah. I still get negative pushback. I'm just coming out into public life in the last 2 years. I've been doing this 6 years. So I had a career.
Did you? Sorry.
Okay.
So you was doing this way before the whole Trump administration, because I noticed a lot of people.
Oh yeah, yes.
A lot of people jumping this wagon.
Everything I was doing, I do it quiet. You have to find me.
Yeah.
You had to find me.
Oh yeah.
Someone to get in touch with me, and so I was approached. This is shortly after Trayvon Martin by a group of white women who were in high levels of management. And who, not for nothing, wanted to save their jobs, and thought, and had, believed in what I did, and were clients already, and with the spiritual guidance work that I did. And, full disclosure, I'm okay not talking about race with white people. Like, that's not something that I wake up and, I'm happy to do it. I'm happy to serve. I do this because I'm in service to spirit. However, I could be with plants like that way. Can we go our dogs? So, them coming to me, it wasn't something that I was like, yes, this is it. And there were a few parameters that I set, and that's the foundation of Season of Lotus. So we don't pretend like white people need to learn anything. They don't. Because they understand racism inside and out, just like everybody else. The second is there is white innocence and ignorance is a fallacy as well, right? Those are like 1A, 1B. And so once we took those off the table, then we started to, because again, this is kind of a holistic perspective. This is about feeling, and then real life situations, because, the U.S. gives you content and educational material for days, like literally. The current administration has only amplified what was already there, right? So and then using the terminology, it was about shifting, because again, it's about conditioning, and they are making the choice to override that, right? And trust what's within them. Racism is not a natural thing, it's a learned thing. So they have to go back. And one of the things I teach is that racism is learned before language, right? So before they could label it, they learned to have this aversion to Black people. It didn't make rational sense, but they trusted their caregiver. And so that's the foundation. Before you have language, now there's verbal language, right? Because they're still communicating. So they're learning the other nonverbal language, right? So they've learned racism nonverbally, and then the verbal language comes in, and excuse me, and it's like the cement, right? It's the icing that makes it all look pretty. Yeah. And so going back to that, the one thing and one of the crucial things that I teach is that, sorry, I don't teach, I share, is that I get caught up. You can tell when I'm in spirit and not in spirit. One of the crucial things that I share is that the focus is the damage that is done to white people. The perception that you're free and that you have all these things is false, because you don't. Because as we see, first of all, when you are learning, going back to, toddler age and nonverbal communication, you're learning to distrust yourself, right? Because children naturally want to play with each other. They're not naturally racist. Mm-hmm. So when that's starting to be implemented, they have to distrust what their natural urge is. And that lays the foundation for distrusting themselves, second guessing, and it opens the door for all the other isms. Because if this is true, then this must be true, and this must be true about me because I don't fit in, and Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so people just kept coming to me. That is why. And then, a couple of years ago, someone was like, you need to, they were asking if they could teach it, and then they're like, no, come and teach. And I was like, I don't teach, and blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, say you teach. It was this whole thing. And so I started doing workshops. And then I was at an herbal conference, long story short, I met a few people, and then the Parliament of World Religions, I had the honor of speaking there and sharing of how I see, or my understanding, or what I have to share about the intersection of spirituality and race. And since then, 2017, the cat's out of the bag. It's kind of like the subway. So
yeah, it's interesting because this is my first time hearing someone intermingle spirituality and racism together.
Right. Because the other way, when we keep it non-spiritual, that's how we perpetuate racism, right? That's how we maintain it.
Yeah.
If we look at it, it's by design. Because if we look at the phrase white privilege, it's not a privilege to be white. Privilege has a meaning outside of that phrase, right? And so that the energy and the relativity of that word privilege overrides the phrase white privilege. So then it's like white people are like, the white people who are racist or whatever you want to say, white people in discussion like, it's not a privilege to be white, and then they're right. Mm-hmm. Right? So then you have to go back, and if we lay this out energetically, that back and forth, right, is a power dynamic. Because if you're sharing, especially if you're coming from a mental place, a logical place, and you're wrong in your first instance, right, that's a weak, now I'm speaking like my old fiance, in a position of power, you weaken your position. But I mean that in a...
That's definitely military lingo.
Yeah, exactly. I mean that in a different... I don't mean that in a...
I got you.
Yeah. But it's about flow, right? And so with something so, what is the word when you soak it in there? So it's soaked, I can't think of the word right now, but something that is so soaked into us, like racism. And it's not logical, right? So if we're trying to discuss it from a mental perspective, from a mental place only, it's going to be unsuccessful because it's not logical. There have been so many illogical leaps, and the gaslighting dynamic of modern society that why would we think that if we're just approaching it from a logical standpoint, that people are going to give up that structure?
Yeah.
No, they're not. And that is the thing that makes it, this question of, speaking of the America, why did so many people support? Why, when he's not, I'm sorry, I'm speaking of the current U.S. President Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
Why are people supporting him when he's losing? And it's clear, because right? They can't explain it because they learned it before language. It's more important than money, right? Because money is just representative of an exchange, and they already have, and money's, also a representative of energy. Energy often is conflated with power. It's not necessarily, or in my opinion, it's not at all, but that's how people associate it. And if they can align with power without having money, because they feel better and they're used to that feeling, right? False or not, they're used to, and they want to maintain it. And before they could label it, they were taught that it is the most important thing to preserve. And it makes perfect sense why half the country supports him. I
get it.
Yeah, right. So if we have a conversation, if we connect with, okay, excuse me, this advantage. First of all, we come to the table saying, okay, we know there's the white people that we engage have to have those the precursors. What are those called? The things you need before you could take a class.
The prerequisites.
These prerequisites in place of not saying I didn't know because you did. You can't get to this age. Toddlers know it. There's a couple videos that I have that I share where it shows toddlers. There's one little girl, she's lying about who ate the biscuits, because apparently she ate the biscuits. Long story short, her mother's like, who did it? It's not the dog, it's not this, who is this? And she says, a black man. Right? And so it shows that, and she's barely speaking English, right?
That's a real story?
Yeah, I can send you the video. I just don't use it. I use it, I don't post it online repeatedly because I'm not, I don't know how the internet works. So I don't know how to share with you. So I just to cover my bases.
Complex thing in the world, which is the mom, but don't know how the internet works. You know how the internet works. You're wild.
Yeah, you know what? There may be truth in that. So I don't know. My mind is definitely. So I'm unsure of how to. I'm not sure what would happen if I just keep posting it publicly. But anyhow, it shows that the paradigm is already set, and she's learning how to use it, right? And excuse me. So we can't go from her to Amy Cooper and say you didn't know, right? Because she knew that set of tools is so ingrained in her. I'm afraid. I'm really afraid, even though I have a dog and distance, daylight, all sorts of things, egress. But I'm still afraid, and I feel like I should call, right? And create this situation and create this fear. And so when we address it like that, then we can say, hey, maybe, and this is, okay, I'm going to fully disclaim my ego's coming up a little bit right now. You said you want politics is not here, so I'm not going to speak.
Go ahead.
But if you're one of the poorest states in the United States, why would you reelect a senator who's not serving you, right? Why would you do that? If the power still feeds you in some way more than actual food, right? And then you can start to lay that stuff out for them, especially if you understand their pain points, which are human pain points. And excuse me, that's when the connections start to be made. And specifically with women, I have found, just women in period, I just prefer working with them. Again, no offense, all respect. And so with white women, there's so much compromise for them because the promise, and I posted about it a couple days ago, it's the 100th anniversary of their suffrage movement. And where are we with someone being put in an office that may move rights that have been fought so hard backwards, that the previous election, a woman candidate was vilified and is still vilified to this day. And all of these things. And then when we, and excuse me, and then the election was won by brown and Black women who don't have access to that power, right? We are expressively and directly targeted to not have that power available from us. And so that's it's the fallacy. We prove, you can see right before you. There are patterns in nature. All of our answers are always around us. We can see, they can see. Mm-hmm. And Mike, we were in a group the other day talking about how, excuse me, and then a woman of color, Black woman, however you want to call her, the vice president, mm-hmm. right, still, put on, the suffrage white when the white suffragists wouldn't put on anything for her ancestors, right? That extension, that humanity, because that's what it always comes back to.
Yeah.
And keep showing them how it doesn't serve them to continue that space, to continue.
Wow.
I hope that made sense.
It did, and I can tell you're very passionate about it too.
I am.
Love that work.
The irony is, I'm not till I get going, because sometimes I've got to meet with the client. I'm like, here she go. But yeah, I am.
I can relate in my line of work too. I always get more the same way. Even like simple podcasting, right? Like I hate. This is the only part of podcasting I like is sitting down talking with the person. But I hate having like, oh man, now I got to send this person an email, and then after this I got to edit the file. I don't mind editing the podcast. I just wish that I have so many to do at one time, and I'm a last minute type of person, and I have to like start rushing things. Like we had one today, and I still had some things I still need to download, and yeah, it was a mess. But I'll get it together one day.
It'll be before me, so
I don't know.
That.
So, one thing I always ask my guests that come on the show, or that I ask our guests that come on the show, is what's one thing that you do every day that you consider therapeutic?
I'm sorry, say that again.
What's one thing that you do every day that you would consider therapeutic to you?
What do I do every day? I talk to my body and I talk to myself. And so, for example, like full disclosure, I've been getting everything online for 6 months. I don't know. And I'm a deep believer in like, I need to know how to do it before I can let anyone else do it. I'm letting go of that, but let's see how 2020 pans out. So at the end of the day, I reflect on my day, and I just, for all the quote unquote failures or things that didn't happen, I just laugh at myself and love myself and just like, why are you like I literally, it's, I have this conversation where I just accept myself and, as I am. And then as I look forward to the next day, I just remind myself I can do anything I want, and that how much I'm loved. And oftentimes in that space, I do feel I call in the presence of loved ones who have passed, and just allow them to buoy me, especially this year. And well, not just this year, the last 2 years, I've definitely needed that. And it has been something that I do now unconsciously. I don't have to set aside time to do it. I automatically do. If I'm on a plane and you hear me talking to myself, just mind your business, because that's what's going, you know what I mean? If I'm flying somewhere, because I usually take red eyes.
Yeah,
that's what I do.
Okay, man. So okay, I like that. I like that answer, because I don't know, but I feel like I can ask you, who are you? And not, when you answer the question, I feel like you wouldn't say, I am whatever your title is, I'm a speaker or whatever. I feel like you can answer who it is that you are. For me, if someone would ask me who is Chris is, initially, I guess I would be like, I'll tell you my job occupation or something like that, but I can't tell you exactly who I am, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I've been asked this a lot, and the thing that comes out of my mouth most often is I am.
That's what you just say, I am?
Yeah. Because at any moment, because I allow myself to be whatever I need to be. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to restrict myself. I love myself too much. And I know how hard I work. I know how intentional I am. Like, even when things fall apart, even when things are a mess, even when things are crushing, yeah, I'm great. I wouldn't want to be anybody else. I've always been that. That could be because I'm a Taurus. I don't know, but I've never wanted to be anybody else. And
she's a Taurus too.
Oh,
I am.
Yes. So yeah. So I think that's often what I say is I am. And if I had to put a label on it, I am a servant to spirit. That is
okay.
Yeah, anything that people need, I would want someone to take away from. I'm a servant to spirit, and I do my best every day to be that to the best of my ability.
Well, so that's why I like doing the podcast, and that's why I like asking that last question I just asked you, because there's been so many guests that come on to answer the question. I can always take certain things and take certain ideas and utilize them into my daily life. So that's something that now I got to come up with a way to answer that question. Because if someone, I feel like now someone over the next few years or before I leave this earth, would you be able to communicate with me after that? She said so. For
sure.
I'll be able to answer that question. So I feel like someone's going to ask that question.
Like he'll answer real quick in real detail. So
I don't know. Well, I wish I could say I am, but I'm sure you get this when people say, when you answer that question, I'm sure they're left with so much dissatisfaction in their life because they want a little bit more from you. What do you mean I am?
Right. And I allow them to stay there because that's the gift that I'm giving, is that they, when they start to realize, because that's, when you're wanting so much more, that means you've missed something. If someone's giving you something and you're wanting so much more, what have you missed? Because your expectation has blanketed what's actually been given to you.
Right.
And so I let them sit with it. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Any questions you'd like to ask, Raven?
No, Christopher.
Okay. Whatever you say. Okay, so because you have to be found. You said that plenty of times on this podcast. So how can they can reach out to you on Facebook? Or like, what's the best way to, if someone
looking like Facebook,
if someone wants to find you, how would they contact you?
So you can, I'm on Instagram, and I've just figured out the messaging. So that's a great way to reach an email. Laura Knight Conduit, because there are all these extra mailboxes that I didn't ask for, where there's messages sitting and those dots that never go away. But I figured it out. So Instagram, because I feel like I've done that. I don't know why you look for me on Pinterest, so don't say that. And yeah, definitely not Twitter. So yeah, Instagram, Facebook, and at the Season of Lotus, Laura Knight. Those are my pages. Okay. And I can't think of any place else.
Okay, so what I'm gonna do before this episode comes out, I'm gonna reach back out to you, and you can just send me all those links. That way, I can plug them into the podcast, so people can go and visit them and stuff. All right, that's all I have for you today. That was a great episode. Anything else you'd like to add anything else you'd like to add in closing?
No, thank you so much. This has been a great time. No, just thank you for spending time together.
Okay, this is awesome. I appreciate you for coming again.
All right.
All right. Next time you're in the UK, let us know. I got some questions to ask you. Do it.
I have a place to take you to get that grandfather call going. So yeah, I have a few places actually. So yeah.
Okay.
Look how you looking.
All right. Let's do it. All right, it's been another episode of the Puppet Therapy Podcast with host Chris
and Ray.
And today we have with us Laura Knight. Laura, you have a good one, all right?
You too.
All
Thanks,
right.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.